Welcome to the Voice of the Victim podcast. My name's Ryan.
And I'm Rosie.
How are you doing tonight, Rosie?
Nervous.
Yeah.
But it's good. I like being able to have my own space.
Yeah, this is our second attempt at recording a video podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And tonight we actually have separate cameras. As you can see, we're sitting across the desk from each other again. We're not looking at half of Rosie's face, kind of leaning out of the shot. And our camera should be able to track our faces now for focus because it's not one camera trying to track two faces at different depths. So that should help. Anyway, if you're listening over on a podcast platform, we are on YouTube now, and we're doing video as we record.
Yes, we are.
So, yeah, we're trying to freshen things up a bit over here at Voice of the Victim podcast. You know, try some new things, and we're excited about it. So, do you have anything else you want to talk about before we jump into this?
Thinking about getting a glass of wine, but also I think I'm going to wait.
All right. Sounds good. Well, tonight we are talking about... Hold on while I get a proper pronunciation here. When I first saw the name, I thought it was Javier, but I think it's Javier. It looks like Xavier.
But it's not, for sure.
Well, everything I watched said Javier.
Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès.
What?
Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès.
Javier Dupont de Ligonnès.
It kind of sounds like Javier.
Javier Dupont.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Javier.
Mm-hmm.
But not like air, more like like almost like you're gonna roll your tongue, but you don't. Anyway, well, we'll do our best with that. Glad we checked. So, Javier Dupont de Ligonnès. He was an educated engineer from Nantes, France. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong too. Nantes?
Nantes.
It's pronounced Nantes. Glad I looked that up. Wow. So he was from Nantes, France, born into an aristocratic family of French nobility, actually. So pretty high status. Professionally, he had his fingers in many different pies. Although he was an engineer, trained as one, he also worked as a salesman and was also trying to grow his own self-employed business.
So we talked about what year this was?
2011 is when the story takes place, but I'm just giving a little background first.
Got it.
So his little business, I guess it served traveling salespeople and restaurant guests. I couldn't find exactly what it did, and we'll talk about why. Among his different businesses was something called Selref, all caps, Selref. What this business did was actually very vague. At one point he had 6 employees listed as salespeople, but all information about Selref is very ambiguous. There's no real information about what they did. And we'll talk more about this later. His actual work was very...
sketchy?
But more like clandestine or secretive. I don't know the right word to describe it. But no one really knows what he was doing.
He sounds like a sketchball already.
Yeah, and we'll talk more later about his financial state. But Javier's wife, her name was Agnes, and she worked as an assistant at a Catholic school in Nantes. She was very religious, regularly attended Mass with her children, where she was known to be very kind, yet strict with the children. Now, speaking of which, they had 4 children. They lived in the western suburbs of Nantes. The oldest child was Arthur. He was 20 years old at the time this story takes place in 2011. Agnes had Arthur before she was with Javier, but Javier saw Arthur as his own when they got together. By the age of 20, Arthur was working as a waiter at a pizzeria in Nantes, but he had also earned a Okay, here's another word. French. Basically, there's no real equivalent to what this is, but it's a degree in France, so...
A bachelor's degree?
Yeah, that's what I want to say, but that's not what it is, so... Here, I'll play the pronunciation.
Baccalauréat. Baccalauréat.
Baccalaureate. Baccalaureate. Anyway, I'm not going to get that right probably tonight. I apologize to all the French.
But is it like a bachelor's?
It's the French national academic qualification that students can obtain at the completion of their secondary education. But I don't know. I don't know exactly what the... Let's ask our listeners. If anyone does know, please let us know. But he got that degree in science, industrial technology, and sustainable development, which is pretty intense for a 20-year-old. But he was also studying for a technical diploma in information technology, or IT, like computer stuff. Now, Thomas was the second child. He was 18 years old. I think it was the first child Agnes and Xavier had together.
Okay.
But Thomas was very passionate about music, so that's pretty cool. Anne was 16 years old in 2011, was known to be very religious like her mom, and was very considerate and approachable, according to her friends. She also did some modeling work for mail order catalogs, so kind of an entrepreneur.
Wow.
And the youngest child, 13-year-old Benoit, it's spelled Benoit, but I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong as well. But I think this is the last thing I need to look up.
Benoit.
Yep, it's Benoit.
Benoit.
Okay, I should probably learn a little bit of introductory French before this, but it's too late now.
It's okay.
Benoit was an altar server at their church in Nantes and also played the drums.
Oh, wow, what a mix.
Yeah, it's kind of like Anne and Thomas mixed together, it sounds like.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, the family had a neighbor named Estelle Chapon who saw the family regularly doing some clothing alterations and ironing work for the family. They were typically very lively and busy, according to Estelle, living across the street from them. Mm-hmm. She saw kind of their daily routine. But now that brings us to April 11th, 2011. This is the day this all kind of starts. Around 2 p.m., Estelle noticed that the family home was very quiet. All the shutters were closed up and there was no movement, which, again, was very unusual because they're typically lively and busy. So she walked over to the house to investigate. When she walked past the mailbox, she saw a note requesting that no more mail be delivered, which was very odd because, if they were going to move or whatever, they would have let her know.
Yeah, this is interesting because initially I'm thinking, what a nosy neighbor.
Yeah.
But if they were really that busy and outgoing and stuff, then I guess it would be a real change.
And they were pretty close to her. Like, again, she worked for them sometimes. So she knocked on the door, but no one answered, and it was locked. Other weird thing is the family had 2 dogs that would typically have some kind of reaction to someone being at the door.
Right.
But it was completely quiet. My first thought would be the family went on vacation and just didn't tell Estelle, but why would they stop their mail, indefinitely? Because the note didn't say, please hold our mail until this date. It just said, no more delivery. But like I said before, I'm guessing they were so close with Estelle that she'd expect them to tell her when they were going out of town.
Yeah.
Now, Estelle was concerned and called the police for a welfare check. But this is weird. They didn't arrive until 2 days later. She noticed all this stuff on the 11th. Police arrived on Wednesday, April 13th. Again, there was no answer at the door, so they called a locksmith to open the front door. And inside the home, everything seemed to be in its place. There were some open closet doors and beds with the sheets stripped off. Otherwise, it appeared the family had left the house voluntarily, no struggle or anything. So since nothing seems suspicious, they didn't investigate any further.
I'm sure they're like, why are we here?
Yeah, I mean, can't really blame them at this point. Everything looks pretty normal. But for people who were closer to them, who knew them in daily life, like Estelle, she still felt pretty uneasy about this whole situation. One detail in particular that really made her suspicious was all the family cars were still there except for Javier's C5 Corvette, which, as far as I could tell, is only a 2-seat
So that would
car.
that's strange.
Yeah. So there's no way this family of 6 could fit in that car, let alone luggage for making any kind of extended trip, and their 2 dogs. Now, I guess, like you were saying before, there's an exception for the dogs. Like, they could have been taken to a sitter.
They could have been on a road trip with dogs, rented a camper, and had somebody borrow the car. I don't know.
You'd think Estelle would have noticed if there was an RV that
that's true. She does seem pretty nosy and on top of it.
But maybe if she was out of the house when they got in the RV, that's a possibility. But it's still very odd. Like, how would they get anywhere with just that car without taking any of the other cars?
Right.
Now, the next day, friends and family started receiving letters from Xavier that seemed to offer some answers. The letters read, "As you know, I've had links with the U.S. The Americans have recruited me to infiltrate an international drug ring."
What?
Yeah, he continues, "This will be hard. You won't see us for a long while, as we're going to change identity, be under protection, and won't be reachable at all."
What did he do again for work?
Uh,
The sketchy thing.
he had an engineering degree, but he worked in sales for the service industry.
How bizarre.
At least that's what we can find.
And he needed the whole family to do this mission too?
Well, if they're changing identities, I guess, one person can't change their identity without the whole family doing it.
Right.
But my question is, why would the Americans, like as he said, quote unquote, the Americans, use a family man with a big family?
Right.
You'd think if they were going to go to the trouble to change identity, they'd pick someone who's easy, doesn't have a lot of family, not a
Well, maybe it's
aristocratic.
it's even more non-suspicious that way.
Maybe.
By having this huge normal family.
I guess, yeah, thinking 2 steps ahead. But obviously this letter was a big shock to many of the people who received them. They had no choice but to accept it because they couldn't get in contact with the family. Now, Javier's friends and family were mostly understanding of the circumstance.
Really?
Yeah, on his side. But Agnes's family, on the other hand, was much more skeptical because, they couldn't believe their daughter would
Yeah, I
do
think
this without telling them.
I would be on the
Goodbye.
skeptical side.
Yeah. They actually sent a letter to Nantes district attorney saying that they didn't believe this was true because for that reason, they couldn't believe Agnes would leave without saying goodbye. Mm-hmm. Like, even if she couldn't tell them what she was doing, at least say goodbye.
Well, she could have pretended they were going on a vacation and said goodbye or something.
Yeah, true. But, so on April 15th, the police returned to the house to do a more thorough search at the request of Agnes' family. And this time, they noticed that photos were missing from picture frames, but yet again, this was the only odd detail they found on this search. So I guess they missed that the first time?
It does kind of go with the drug ring idea.
I suppose.
Like once the
deleting their
memories.
identity. Yeah, but it's weird that they didn't notice this on the first search.
Right.
Now, still, Agnes's family was not satisfied with this result because they really didn't find anything. They continued to put pressure on the police to investigate, leading to 4 days in a row of searches of the house. From April 18th to the 21st, each day there was a search of the house.
So, like, the police are just getting better and better with each search? Or, I just feel like after 2 times, they probably got everything.
I don't know.
Unless they were in
they
on
just
it.
weren't putting that much staff toward this case because they were like, well, nothing's probably wrong. They just probably left.
I feel like they probably were like, this is a nosy neighbor. It's in these people's business, so we're just going to check it out. And they probably just totally passed over the photo albums.
Maybe.
Or photo frames or whatever.
But they did 4 more searches in a row after that. I'm guessing they maybe didn't have as many people searching as they could have, so it took longer to be more thorough.
Yeah.
Because on the 21st, on the 6th search of the house, a lieutenant made a terrifying discovery that answered one big question. Under the terrace, they found several large plastic trash bags wrapped in tape. And inside, there were bodies wrapped in blankets, each containing a small religious icon like a cross or a candle, and then lime had been spread over the top of the graves, like what's his name used to do, which speeds up decomposition. The bodies were identified as Agnes, Arthur, Thomas, Anne, Benoit, and the 2 dogs.
Well, where's Xavier?
Yeah, Javier was nowhere to be found. And that was the big
two
question.
dogs also? Wow.
Yeah.
Like, so everybody's wiped out.
Yeah, which gives a pretty big red flag on Javier. So between that and the fact that this burial seemed to be almost ceremonial, indicating a person that had a personal connection,
Right.
Javier became the prime suspect, naturally.
Did it say how they passed away? Like gunshot or?
We'll talk about it
Okay.
in a little bit. An international warrant was issued for his arrest after this, and obviously, this was a huge shock to most friends and family who knew Javier. They couldn't believe he could do this. I mean, can you imagine Agnes's family after this whole week of stress and worry, like, where is my daughter, my sister, whatever, finding this out? Not only did you lose your daughter, but also your 4 grandchildren or cousins or nieces and nephews, and the dogs. That would have been really difficult. But considering the low, small space beneath the terrace where the family was found, a lot of people didn't believe Javier could do this because he constantly complained about back pain. And, it's hard to move bodies. They're pretty heavy.
I mean, adrenaline, but I guess.
Mm-hmm. Some people thought it wasn't even possible that he could have dug these holes to begin with, let alone move the bodies. And he had no criminal history, which that's never like a great excuse. You don't have a criminal history until you do. You know? No one does until they do.
Was he recently getting any work done on the deck? That seems like a difficult feat to do all this with nobody nosing in.
I'm not sure about that. We will talk more of a timeline later that comes out. Mm-hmm. But to many of his friends, Javier was known to be like a father hen. Making an effort to be present in his kids' lives, being very protective, showing care and concern.
A father hen? Like a rooster?
Well, yeah, but, acting more like with what would be considered motherly instinct.
I've never heard that before.
Well, that's just a quote from people who knew him. So this was also very odd because he seemed so present in his kids' lives, like he cared so much about his kids. Autopsies were performed on the family members, and in each of the children, they found remnants of sleeping pills, but there were none found in Agnes, and no drugs at all were detected in her system. Now, Agnes did use a sleep apnea machine to sleep, but they found that it had quit working in the middle of the night.
Well, that's suspicious.
And each victim, to answer your question earlier, each victim had suffered 2 bullet wounds to the head from a .22 long rifle. What's weird is that no neighbors had heard anything.
Yeah, that is strange. I mean, 2 bullets per person, and there were how many people?
6. 5 that died.
You would think that someone would hear one of those 10 bullets, unless there was a silencer on it. Can you have a silencer on that kind of gun? Or
well, we'll get to that. So it was theorized that Agnes died first, and then each of the children followed, being executed while laying in their own beds. Despite several searches, there was no trace of blood found anywhere in the house, including the bedrooms. It's pretty hard to justify these theories that they were shot in their own beds while missing so much evidence.
It seems impossible.
Yeah. How could they be shot there, then moved out of the house? Now, another thing that Javier's friend Bruno pointed out is that for French nobility in the aristocratic world, like them, because Javier's friend Bruno was also from an aristocratic French noble family, the family lineage was a very important thing. And by executing his family, Javier would have been terminating his lineage. Right. So that's the end of his family name. That was another thing that stood out. On the outside, it seemed really impossible that Javier could have anything to do with this, because they'd always appeared to be a very wholesome, close family. They had their kids in private schools. They were living in a nice home. But, how many times have we heard that before? According to the Paris police chief at the time, when they looked further into the life of the family, they discovered some surprising things. So this is where some answers start to come out.
Okay.
In the early 2000s, the family lost almost all their money while trying to relocate to Florida in the United States.
From France to Florida?
That was my question. Oh, boy. Why?
That's a step in a different direction.
That's one way to put it. But this move went very badly. They actually made the move, but it didn't work out the way they wanted to, and they lost all the money they spent on this effort, which was pretty much all their savings.
I wonder what drew them to Florida.
Well,
not very France-like.
Back in the early 2000s, Florida was the place to be,
Well, it is the place to be for fun, but not to live. In my opinion,
it's pretty hot, pretty humid.
It gets pretty hot.
But, I guess it's always fun to make a big change like this. Mm-hmm. To them, Florida is exotic.
That's a huge change.
Yeah. Now, Javier's friend Bruno said that after this failure of moving, Javier had been in a downward spiral of failure because, they lost so much money doing this and it didn't even work out the way they wanted to.
I would imagine.
So although having such a high status appearance on the outside and claiming to have several successful businesses, like we talked about in the beginning, Javier really didn't find any success in any of his ventures. So he was in a lot of debt.
Right.
And he had all these things that made him look rich that he couldn't pay for. Shortly before all of this went down, Javier learned that he was almost out of money completely. The family would be losing the house. Apparently he had a strong sense of pride and feared being exposed as unsuccessful because, his family name.
Right. Makes sense.
He wanted to live up to it. But it turns out he had a debt of around 20,000 euro that bailiffs had been stopping by the house to collect. But on top of that, just 3 months earlier in January, Javier had lost his father Hubert to a heart attack. And when this happened, he was desperate to recover anything of value from his father's estate, because he was in trouble himself.
Right.
And he actually learned that Hubert, his father, had also been having money issues for several years. He didn't really have anything. He saw that his father's life had ended in illness, loneliness, and poverty, and he feared the same fate later in life. So while Javier was in Hubert's apartment, he found a .22 rifle that had belonged to his father. And on February 2nd, Javier obtained his firearms license and started learning how to shoot for the very first time in his life. He had never had any interest in guns before, so obviously looks terrible for Javier's case.
Yeah, it does.
He took the weapon from his father that was used to kill his family.
I guess the one thing that doesn't look so bad is that, if you're going to take the gun, you probably would not even bother with the classes and stuff because that would make you look suspicious.
You would think so.
He was trying to be responsible with it. I don't know.
You would really think so. And there's so many weird things in this case that we'll continue to talk about. Since you say that, he had taken 2 of his sons to the shooting range with him. Like it was a family activity or something. And while he was there, he asked his instructor about how to use a silencer. Oh,
that's not good.
Yeah. Anytime someone needs a silencer, it's not a good thing.
Yeah, that's what I don't... people should be flagged.
Yeah.
I can't think of any other reason why you would want a silencer.
I'm pretty sure they're illegal in the U.S. or in most states. I don't even know why anyone makes them because it's literally a murderer's best friend.
Yeah.
But on March 12th, Javier bought a silencer for the rifle less than a month before his entire family was shot. Another sad detail that came up is that Thomas had been out of town the weekend all this happened. He was the second son, second oldest. And Javier actually called Thomas saying that Agnes had gotten into a bicycle accident and was at the hospital in a coma to get Thomas to come home.
That's so scary.
And at midnight on Tuesday, April 5th, Thomas sent a text to a friend. The friend responded quickly, but never received a message back. And Thomas ended up being in a separate grave from the rest of the family. So it's theorized that the rest of the family had been killed over the weekend. And Thomas was killed on a different night.
Wow.
And buried in a different grave. So after discovering all this, police obviously wanted to find Javier, and they started to investigate him more thoroughly. And there's actually a pretty detailed timeline of what was going on in this family around the time that Javier went missing. So we're going to go through some of the details on that. The lease on the house had been terminated during this time. All bank accounts had been closed, which I guess those go along with the we need to change our identity theory.
I guess, yeah.
But the children's school received a final payment settlement. Javier phoned Agnes' employer to inform them she was suffering from gastroenteritis.
What's that?
It's some kind of stomach issue. Gastro is, stomach. And 2 days after that, the employer received a text saying Agnes had been hospitalized and couldn't be contacted by phone. But then a week after that, the employer received a letter saying it was directly from Agnes and saying that she was terminating her employment, she was quitting, explaining that she was following Javier to Australia. So that's odd.
Yeah.
But again, it's kind of to go along with this whole facade that they're changing their identities, going out of the place. But obviously it seems like Javier wrote this,
Well, yeah.
given all the other evidence we've just talked about. Now, during one of the searches, a sales receipt was found from a DIY store dated to a Wednesday in late March. There wasn't a specific date on it, I guess, but it was either the 23rd or the 30th. And it listed several purchases, including a roll of large bin liners or trash bags and box of adhesive plastic paving slabs.
Paving slabs.
Which, when they say paving, it sounds like it's for outside, but it almost sounds like those adhesive vinyl things that I got for our basement.
Maybe there's like outdoor editions or something.
Yeah. But it sounds like it's something you would put over a grave.
Right.
Right. But, as time went on, none of the kids were showing up at the places they were supposed to be. Arthur didn't show up for his job at the pizzeria. He didn't show up to pick up his paycheck, which no one wants to miss out on their paycheck.
It's a huge red flag.
So this was a huge surprise to his boss. On Saturday, April 2nd, here's the real smoking gun. Javier buys 4 bags of lime, 10 kilograms each, from different shops in the Nantes area. So that pretty much answers the question. Did Javier do it?
He did it.
So at 10:37 p.m. on April 3rd, the day this all went down, Javier had left a message on his sister Christine's answering machine, and it said, "We spent our Sunday evening at the cinema together, then in a restaurant, and we just got back," which is really sad because now we know what actually happened that night. He said, "I'm just calling to ask if it's too late to speak to you on the phone, and now I see it's gone to voicemail." Said, "Anyway, sending you my love. If it's not too late, call me back or send me a text and I'll call you. Okay, I'm going to put the kids to bed. Say hi to everyone. See you soon. Maybe." So it's almost like he was calling his sister to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Which I guess this was to go along with his, we are changing our identities, leaving the state. But thinking about what he had actually done that night and saying, "I'm going to put the kids to bed." Actually, I wonder if this was before it all happened. Because it said Agnes's machine stopped working around 3 a.m. I'm guessing Monday morning.
Totally could be.
But just imagining what was going through his head, knowing what he was going to do. So weird. Anne and Benoit didn't turn up to their school. Everyone was starting to notice that the family was missing. Now on Monday, April 4th, Javier actually talked on the phone to his sister, Christine. She returned his call. They talked for 20 to 30 minutes, and she said everything seemed normal. Now that same day, we said that Javier had called Thomas to come home.
Right.
Turns out that Monday night, he actually went out to dinner with Thomas. They had dinner together at a restaurant.
Maybe that dinner was a goodbye dinner in his own way.
It's so messed up, though. Yeah, you're probably right. Tuesday, April 5th, a bailiff actually showed up to recover Javier's debt, $20,000. And this was after he killed his family, so it's not like this pushed him over the edge, which is really weird. But of course, no one answered the door. Now, there's a lot more stuff behind the scenes that Javier did to try to cover his tracks, try to go along with this narrative that he created. Now, his last known stop was at a hotel where his car was discovered because he is still missing.
Is he really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I didn't think he'd be so smart as to still be missing.
I know. He was spotted April 15th, 2011, 4 days after the bodies were found, on hotel surveillance cameras walking across the parking lot, carrying a bag with what looked like the rifle he'd used hanging out of it. Now, this area is surrounded by cliffs and mountains, so some people believe he walked off into the mountains to take his life.
Oh, that's possible.
Yeah. And police searched this area for several weeks, scouring caves and cliffs, but again, he was nowhere to be found. But of course, this is vast wilderness. It's a huge area, so they still believed he could have taken his life and they just couldn't find him.
Well, yeah, and like wild animals, the elements, rains.
True. But other people think that he just got away with murder and fled to a new life. And among those people is a journalist named Anne Sophie. She believes that because of the great lengths he went to cover up his crime scene, it was completely clean. He hid the bodies. Why would he do that if he just planned to die? That is a good question, but what I would say is he was last seen on the 15th. That was 4 days after his family was missing, you know, so he knew people were looking for them. So maybe that changed it. Maybe he was hoping no one would say anything and they'd just buy his story.
That's so crazy. That I mean, you can't be serious if you really thought people were going to believe this story. It's just so out there.
This case was pretty quiet until October of 2019. A man was arrested at the airport in Glasgow, Scotland, who authorities believed to be Xavier. He was fingerprinted. He was a partial match even. So he was given a DNA test, but this confirmed that the man was not Xavier. After this case appeared on Netflix Unsolved Mysteries, a viewer called in a tip about seeing a man who looked like Xavier speaking French in Chicago, Illinois. But this man was never located or identified. But it does give a sliver of maybe he was in Chicago at this time.
It's possible.
The journalist who believes that he's on the run also noted that the coast was only 30 kilometers away from where he was last seen, and he may have made a quiet escape out of France on a boat. Or he could have driven to Italy via highway, mountain path, something like that, or ridden the train to Croatia or some other country. You know, there's a lot of possibilities, but no solid answers. But she theorizes, since he's multilingual, fluent in French, English, and Spanish.
Well, that would help a lot.
Yeah. Because of this, she thinks he's managed to escape somewhere in Latin America. Bruno, his old best friend, also believes that's a possibility, and maybe he took a cargo ship out of Hamburg or something like that and settled in Argentina. A complication a lot of people point out is that Javier's appearance is very plain. He has really no standout features. He blends in easily to crowds. Either way, we'll post a picture of him on our Instagram, as well as the family who lost their lives, so you can keep an eye out for this guy. And, you know, friends and family of the victims want to find out where he is and get some justice for what happened. Figure out why he did this. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious he was overwhelmed with debt and just wanted to escape.
I feel like maybe he was in trouble with some bad people, too.
It does feel like that.
Yeah. Maybe they all threatened his family, and he decided it'd be easier, less painful if he did it instead of them.
Yeah. Bury them with their little religious...
It's just a speculation.
Huh. I hadn't thought of it that way before. That kind of makes a little sense. Interesting perspective. Well, that's all I got for this story. It's very...
What a bizarre story.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's still very strange. Very murky and mysterious and doesn't feel real. Like, how did this guy... How do these things happen? It's just... You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It sounds like a fiction book.
It's really messed up, really sad. I want to thank the person who suggested this to us as well. Amanda, thank you so much. We appreciate that. And that's where we're going to wrap it up. Do you have anything else to say before we finish up?
Should we have a cat grace us with our presence?
Oh, yeah. It's about that time, isn't it?
Come here. They're running.
Yeah, I bet.
Come here.
Hey, Zook.
Oh, they're all three of them. No, Quesadilla's too camera shy. But
There's Burrito.
He just doesn't show up very good.
He came on last week, too. He's a little low there. Can't really see him that well. Here, let me do this. There he is.
He's like, no thanks.
Now, all of a sudden, they're not interested. They didn't come in here to be on camera.
I guess not.
Oops. Well, thank you for listening. What do you think, Rosie? Should we wrap it up?
I think so. I think it's wine time, a.k.a. It's after 5 p.m., so that's okay.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
I think it went better. I put my hair up so I wouldn't be able to play with it.
Hey, that's a good tactic.
So instead I play with my necklace.
Again, this was our first actual story episode on video.
Yes.
So let us know how we did. If you are listening on a podcasting or a regular podcast platform, hop over to YouTube, look up Voice of the Victim podcast. We also put a link in the show notes of every episode, or of this episode at least, where you can go to our YouTube and give us a sub, say hi. What I like about YouTube is the listeners, you, can comment and interact with us. Mm-hmm. It's really nice being able to hear from our listeners with every episode we post. Instead of like a podcast, it just goes out into the ether. We don't really hear people's feedback unless they make the effort to reach out to us on a different platform.
Right.
YouTube lets people do that on the same platform they're listening on. So
Right.
that's a fun little feature that I love about YouTube. Anyway, I think we'll wrap it up there.
Okay.
So thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.